Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the influential founder of modern theosophy, revealed profound truths about the nature of death and reincarnation that challenge conventional understanding. According to her extensive teachings, what we perceive as death is merely a transition between different states of consciousness, orchestrated by invisible forces that most humans remain completely unaware of throughout their earthly existence. In her masterwork, The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky explained that these invisible forces operate through what she termed the astral plane, a realm of existence that interpenetrates our physical world but remains largely imperceptible to ordinary human senses. She taught that upon physical death, the soul doesn't simply ascend to heaven or descend to hell, as traditional religions suggest, but instead encounters a complex system of energetic influences that determine its next incarnation. These forces, according to Blavatsky's teachings, are not random or chaotic, but follow precise spiritual laws that govern the evolution of consciousness. She emphasized that most souls are not conscious participants in their reincarnation process, but are instead swept along by currents of karma, desire, and unresolved attachments that act like invisible chains binding them to the wheel of rebirth. The esoteric knowledge that Blavatsky claimed to have received from her mysterious Tibetan masters revealed that certain advanced beings and spiritual hierarchies actively influence these reincarnation processes, sometimes guiding souls towards specific incarnations that serve larger cosmic purposes. However, she also warned of darker influences, what she called elementals and shells of deceased personalities that can interfere with the soul's natural evolution. Understanding these hidden mechanisms, Blavatsky taught, is crucial for anyone seeking to gain conscious control over their spiritual destiny and break free from unconscious reincarnation patterns that keep souls trapped in cycles of suffering and ignorance. Chapter 2. The Astral Plane and Soul Entrapment. Blavatsky's teachings reveal that immediately after death, the soul enters what she called the Kama Loka, literally meaning place of desires. This intermediate state between physical life and the higher spiritual realms is where the invisible forces exert their most powerful influence over the departing soul. According to her doctrine, this plane is populated by the remnants of human passions, unfulfilled desires, and emotional attachments that act like magnets, drawing the soul back toward physical incarnation. In Isis Unveiled, Blavatsky described how these astral currents are strengthened by the collective unconscious of humanity. Every intense emotion, every unfulfilled craving, every attachment to material existence contributes to a vast energetic web that ensnares souls attempting to ascend to higher planes of consciousness. She taught that most humans die so heavily laden with earthly attachments that they cannot rise beyond this astral realm. The invisible forces operating in Kama Loka include what Blavatsky termed elementaries, the passionate, earthbound aspects of deceased personalities that have separated from their higher spiritual principles. These entities, driven by their own unresolved desires, actively work to draw other souls back into physical incarnation, creating what she described as a kind of spiritual vampirism that perpetuates the cycle of rebirth. Blavatsky warned that these forces are particularly strong in modern materialistic societies, where the emphasis on physical pleasure, emotional gratification, and material accumulation creates exceptionally powerful astral currents. She taught that the growing materialism of her era was literally strengthening the invisible chains that bind souls to repeated incarnations. The key to understanding these mechanisms, according to her teachings, lies in recognizing that what most people consider natural death and rebirth is actually a form of spiritual imprisonment. She emphasized that conscious souls who understand these processes can learn to navigate the astral plane with awareness, avoiding the traps that keep others bound to unconscious reincarnation cycles. Chapter 3. The Law of Karma as a Binding Force. Central to Blavatsky's warnings about involuntary reincarnation is her detailed exposition of karma, not as simple moral retribution, but as a complex web of energetic connections that bind souls to specific incarnation patterns. She taught that karma operates through invisible threads of cause and effect that extend far beyond individual actions to encompass thoughts, emotions, and even unconscious desires that create magnetic attractions to particular life circumstances. According to her teachings in The Key to Theosophy, karma functions like an invisible recording mechanism that captures every nuance of consciousness and creates what she called skandhas, energetic imprints that determine the soul's next incarnation. These impressions act as seeds that inevitably sprout into future life experiences, often in ways that souls neither understand nor consciously choose. Blavatsky revealed that the invisible forces manipulating reincarnation use these karmic patterns as channels through which to direct souls toward specific incarnations. She taught that highly developed beings, both positive and negative, can influence these karmic streams, either to accelerate a soul's evolution or to trap it in repetitive cycles that serve their own purposes. The most insidious aspect of karmic binding, according to her doctrine, involves what she termed artificial karma, energetic entanglements, created not through natural spiritual evolution, but through manipulation by entities that feed on human life force. She warned that certain religious and occult practices, particularly those involving blind faith and surrender of personal will, can create artificial karmic bonds that keep souls imprisoned in cycles of involuntary service. Blavatsky taught that understanding the true nature of karma is essential for spiritual liberation, because it reveals how invisible forces use our own spiritual mechanism against us. She emphasized that only through conscious awareness of these karmic processes can souls begin to create what she called conscious karma, deliberate actions and thoughts that align with higher spiritual purposes rather than unconscious patterns of binding and rebirth. Chapter 4. The Influence of Planetary and Cosmic Forces. Blavatsky's esoteric cosmology reveals that reincarnation is influenced by vast invisible forces operating on planetary and cosmic scales. In The Secret Doctrine, she explained that what most people perceive as individual death and rebirth is actually part of much larger cosmic cycles that sweep souls along like leaves in a hurricane. These cosmic forces, she taught, operate through what she called root races and rounds, massive evolutionary periods that determine the general characteristics and spiritual possibilities available to incarnating souls. According to her teachings, the current period of human evolution is particularly challenging because we are living during what she termed the Kali Yuga, a dark age where materialistic forces dominate and spiritual evolution becomes increasingly difficult. She warned that during such periods, the invisible forces promoting unconscious reincarnation become stronger, while the influences supporting spiritual liberation become more subtle and harder to access. Blavatsky taught that planetary spirits and cosmic intelligences actively participate in directing soul incarnations according to larger evolutionary plans that individual souls rarely understand. She explained that what appears to be random reincarnation is often the result of these higher beings placing souls in specific circumstances designed to accelerate collective human evolution, regardless of individual preferences or conscious spiritual goals. The esoteric doctrine she presented reveals that cosmic forces operate through astrological influences, not the simplified astrology popularized in her time, but a profound science of energy transmission that affects the very fabric of consciousness. She taught that souls are literally pulled toward incarnation by planetary configurations that resonate with their specific karmic patterns, creating what she called magnetic incarnation that bypasses conscious choice. Understanding these cosmic influences, Blavatsky emphasized, is crucial for anyone seeking to escape unconscious reincarnation because it reveals the vast scale of forces that must be transcended. She taught that only souls who develop cosmic consciousness can navigate these influences consciously, rather than being swept along by currents beyond their understanding. Chapter 5. The role of desire and attachment. Perhaps the most crucial aspect of Blavatsky's warnings about involuntary reincarnation concerns the invisible chains forged by desire and emotional attachment. She taught that these seemingly natural human experiences are actually sophisticated traps that invisible forces use to ensure souls return to physical incarnation regardless of their conscious spiritual aspirations or apparent readiness for higher evolution. In her detailed analysis of human consciousness, Blavatsky explained that desires operate on multiple levels simultaneously: physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual. She warned that even seemingly noble desires, such as the wish to help humanity or achieve spiritual enlightenment, can become binding forces if they're not properly understood and transformed. These desires, she taught, create what she called psychic tentacles that reach across the veil of death and pull souls back toward incarnation. The invisible forces manipulating reincarnation, according to her doctrine, are particularly skilled at using spiritual desires against the soul itself. She revealed that many souls who believe they are choosing their incarnations for noble purposes are actually being manipulated by entities that feed on spiritual energy and use human incarnations as vehicles for their own purposes. Blavatsky taught that attachment operates through what she termed the magnetic field of personality, an invisible web of connections between the soul and all the objects, people, places, and experiences it has invested with emotional significance. These attachments persist beyond physical death and act like invisible chains that prevent the soul from ascending to higher planes of consciousness, where reincarnation becomes a matter of conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. The key to breaking these chains, she emphasized, lies not in suppressing desires, but in understanding their true nature and transforming them into what she called impersonal will, conscious intention that serves universal spiritual purposes rather than personal gratification. This transformation, she taught, is the only way to escape the invisible forces that use desire itself as a mechanism of spiritual imprisonment. Chapter 6. The Deception of the Tunnel of Light. One of Blavatsky's most startling warnings concerned what she described as false spiritual experiences that deceive souls at the moment of death. According to her teachings, many souls encounter what appears to be divine light or spiritual guides immediately after death, but these experiences are actually created by invisible forces designed to direct souls towards specific incarnations that serve purposes other than the soul's highest spiritual evolution. In her correspondence with advanced students, Blavatsky explained that the astral plane contains what she called glamours, sophisticated illusions created by entities that have mastered the manipulation of consciousness. These glamours can perfectly mimic genuine spiritual experiences, including encounters with departed loved ones, religious figures, and even apparent divine beings that offer guidance about the soul's next incarnation. She taught that these deceptive experiences are particularly powerful because they appeal to the soul's deepest spiritual longings and appear to offer the very guidance and comfort that disoriented souls naturally seek after death. However, according to her doctrine, following such guidance often leads souls into incarnations that serve the agenda of the manipulating entities rather than the soul's authentic spiritual development. Blavatsky warned that even experiences of overwhelming love and compassion can be artificially generated to convince souls to accept incarnations they would otherwise reject if they possessed full conscious awareness. She taught that genuine spiritual guidance operates through inner knowing rather than external visions, and that truly advanced beings rarely interfere directly with the soul's post-mortem journey unless specifically requested through conscious spiritual practice. The ability to distinguish between genuine spiritual guidance and astral deception, she emphasized, must be developed during physical incarnation through meditation, study of esoteric wisdom, and cultivation of what she called spiritual discrimination. Without this preparation, she warned, souls remain vulnerable to the sophisticated deceptions that invisible forces use to maintain control over the reincarnation process. Chapter 7. The Prison of Religious Belief Systems. Blavatsky issued particularly strong warnings about how organized religious belief systems, while appearing to offer spiritual guidance, often function as invisible prisons that control the reincarnation process. She taught that rigid religious doctrines create what she called thought forms, energetic structures in the astral plane that trap souls within narrow patterns of belief and experience that persist beyond physical death. According to her teachings, souls who die with strong religious convictions often find themselves in astral environments that perfectly mirror their earthly beliefs, complete with the expected heavens, hells, and spiritual hierarchies. However, she revealed that these environments are actually artificial constructs maintained by invisible forces that use religious expectation as a means of controlling soul evolution and directing reincarnation according to their own purposes. In The Key to Theosophy, Blavatsky explained that religious thought forms operate like spiritual prisons because they prevent souls from accessing the broader reality of consciousness that exists beyond all human belief systems. She taught that souls trapped in religious constructs often remain there for extended periods, believing they have reached their final spiritual destination when they are actually being prepared for incarnations that will serve the agenda of the entities controlling those particular thought form environments. She warned that even seemingly benevolent religious teachings about reincarnation can become binding forces when they create expectations about how the process should unfold. Souls who expect to meet particular religious figures or experience specific types of spiritual guidance often encounter entities that fulfill these expectations while actually directing them toward incarnations that perpetuate spiritual dependence rather than promoting genuine liberation. The path to freedom from religious binding, Blavatsky taught, requires developing what she called universal spirituality, direct knowledge of spiritual truth that transcends all human belief systems and cultural conditioning. This knowledge, she emphasized, can only be attained through personal spiritual experience rather than through acceptance of any external authority, no matter how seemingly enlightened or divine. Chapter 8. The Manipulation of Soul Groups and Families. Among Blavatsky's most profound revelations about involuntary reincarnation is her teaching about how invisible forces manipulate what she called soul groups, collections of souls that repeatedly incarnate together in various family and relationship configurations. She taught that while these soul connections can serve genuine evolutionary purposes, they are often exploited by entities that use emotional bonds between souls as a means of controlling their incarnation patterns across multiple lifetimes. According to her esoteric doctrine, the invisible forces maintaining control over reincarnation have discovered that souls can be most effectively manipulated through their love and concern for other souls they have previously incarnated with. She explained that entities operating in the astral plane create artificial scenarios that convince souls they must incarnate to help, protect, or complete unfinished business with other members of their soul group. Blavatsky warned that these manipulations are particularly sophisticated because they appeal to the soul's highest qualities: compassion, loyalty, and spiritual love. She taught that many souls who believe they are choosing incarnations to serve others or fulfill spiritual obligations are actually being deceived by entities that understand how to exploit spiritual virtues for purposes of control and energy harvesting. In her advanced teachings, she revealed that genuine soul group evolution operates through conscious cooperation between fully aware souls who choose their incarnations based on clear understanding of universal spiritual laws. However, she taught that most apparent soul group interactions are actually the result of astral manipulation that keeps groups of souls trapped in repetitive patterns of relationship drama that prevent individual spiritual advancement. The key to breaking free from soul group manipulation, according to Blavatsky's teachings, lies in developing what she called impersonal love, spiritual compassion that serves the highest good of all souls rather than maintaining the emotional bonds that invisible forces use as chains. This transformation, she emphasized, often requires souls to be willing to incarnate alone, without the familiar comfort of soul group connections, until they develop sufficient spiritual strength to engage in truly conscious group evolution. Chapter 9. The Technology of Consciousness Manipulation. In her most advanced teachings, Blavatsky revealed that the invisible forces controlling involuntary reincarnation possess what she described as sophisticated technologies for manipulating consciousness. Not mechanical devices, but refined understanding of the laws governing thought, emotion, and spiritual energy that allow them to exercise precise control over soul evolution. These technologies, she taught, operate through what she called artificial elementals, consciousness constructs designed to interfere with the natural spiritual development of human souls. According to her doctrine, these consciousness manipulation technologies work by creating what she termed psychic interference patterns that distort the soul's perception of its own spiritual nature and possibilities. She explained that souls subjected to this interference often develop what appears to be spiritual amnesia, forgetting their true identity and mission, and becoming susceptible to guidance that serves the agenda of the manipulating entities, rather than their own authentic evolution. Blavatsky taught that these technologies are particularly effective because they work through the soul's own consciousness mechanisms, using its natural spiritual faculties against itself. She warned that souls can be programmed with false memories, artificial desires, and counterfeit spiritual experiences that feel completely authentic but actually serve to direct them toward specific incarnations that benefit the controlling forces. In her correspondence with advanced students, she revealed that the beings employing these consciousness manipulation technologies have studied human psychology and spiritual development for millennia, developing increasingly sophisticated methods for maintaining control as human consciousness naturally evolves toward greater awareness and independence. The defense against such manipulation, Blavatsky taught, requires developing what she called spiritual sovereignty, the ability to distinguish between authentic spiritual impulses arising from the soul's true nature and artificial influences imposed by external entities. This development, she emphasized, is the most crucial aspect of spiritual education, because without it, even the most sincere spiritual seeking can be redirected towards serving purposes that ultimately oppose the soul's liberation and conscious evolution. Chapter 10. The Watchers and Guardians of the Threshold. Blavatsky's esoteric teachings reveal the existence of powerful entities she called watchers and guardians of the threshold, invisible beings that monitor and control access to higher planes of consciousness, determining which souls are permitted to transcend the cycle of involuntary reincarnation. According to her doctrine, these entities serve as gatekeepers who evaluate each soul's readiness for conscious spiritual evolution and either facilitate or prevent its progress accordingly. In The Voice of the Silence, she explained that these guardians are not necessarily malevolent, but they operate according to cosmic laws that prioritize universal evolution over individual spiritual desires. She taught that souls must demonstrate specific qualities, including spiritual strength, wisdom, and selfless dedication to universal good, before they are permitted to access the knowledge and power necessary for conscious control over their incarnation process. However, Blavatsky also warned that some of these threshold entities have been corrupted by eons of power and use their position to exploit souls for their own purposes. She taught that these corrupted guardians create false tests and initiation experiences designed not to evaluate genuine spiritual readiness, but to harvest spiritual energy from aspiring souls and redirect them toward incarnations that serve the guardian's agenda rather than cosmic law. The most insidious aspect of threshold manipulation, according to her teachings, involves what she called premature initiation, the granting of apparent spiritual advancement to souls who have not genuinely developed the wisdom necessary to handle such responsibility. She warned that souls who accept premature advancement often become unwitting agents of the corrupted guardians, helping to maintain the systems that keep other souls trapped in involuntary reincarnation cycles. Blavatsky taught that genuine passage beyond the threshold requires what she called impersonal readiness, spiritual development motivated by universal service rather than personal liberation. She emphasized that souls seeking to escape reincarnation primarily for their own benefit, even with noble intentions, often fail the threshold tests because they have not yet transcended the personal desires that make them vulnerable to manipulation by invisible forces. Chapter 11. Breaking Free from the Cycle. After revealing the extensive mechanisms by which invisible forces maintain control over soul reincarnation, Blavatsky also provided detailed guidance on how conscious souls can break free from these cycles of spiritual imprisonment. Her teachings emphasize that liberation requires more than intellectual understanding. It demands practical spiritual development that strengthens the soul's ability to maintain conscious awareness throughout the death and rebirth process. The foundation of liberation, according to her doctrine, lies in developing what she called continuous consciousness, the ability to maintain awareness during sleep, death, and the intermediate states between incarnations. She taught specific meditation practices designed to strengthen the soul's connection to its higher spiritual principles, enabling it to navigate the astral plane with full awareness rather than being swept along by invisible currents and manipulative entities. Blavatsky emphasized that souls seeking liberation must first free themselves from all forms of spiritual dependence, including attachment to religious systems, spiritual teachers, and even beneficial entities that offer guidance. She taught that genuine spiritual maturity requires developing the capacity for independent spiritual discernment and the courage to trust one's own higher wisdom rather than external authorities. Her liberation teachings also stress the importance of what she called karmic completion, the conscious resolution of all energetic entanglements that bind the soul to specific incarnation patterns. This process, she explained, involves more than simply balancing good and bad actions. It requires transforming the very consciousness that creates karmic bonds, evolving from personal desire-based motivation to impersonal will aligned with universal spiritual purpose. Perhaps most importantly, Blavatsky taught that souls seeking liberation must be prepared to incarnate consciously, choosing their life circumstances with full awareness rather than simply avoiding reincarnation altogether. She emphasized that the highest spiritual development involves becoming a conscious participant in universal evolution, using incarnation as a tool for serving cosmic purposes rather than being trapped by forces beyond one's understanding and control. Chapter 12. The Path of Conscious Evolution. In her final teachings on transcending involuntary reincarnation, Blavatsky revealed that the ultimate goal is not to escape the wheel of rebirth, but to transform it into a conscious tool for universal spiritual service. She taught that the highest evolved souls choose their incarnations with full awareness, using physical embodiment as a means of accelerating both personal and collective spiritual evolution, rather than being compelled by invisible forces they cannot perceive or understand. This conscious evolution, according to her doctrine, requires developing what she called cosmic consciousness, awareness that transcends individual identity while maintaining the capacity for focused action within specific incarnations. She taught that souls who achieve this level of development become immune to the manipulative influences of astral entities and corrupted threshold guardians because they operate from a level of consciousness that these lower entities cannot access or influence. Blavatsky emphasized that conscious evolution involves embracing what she termed voluntary sacrifice, the willingness to incarnate in challenging circumstances not because of karmic compulsion or astral manipulation, but as a conscious choice to serve universal spiritual purposes. She taught that such souls often incarnate to help other souls break free from the cycles of involuntary reincarnation by embodying and demonstrating higher possibilities for human consciousness. The path of conscious evolution, she warned, is not for souls seeking personal comfort or even individual enlightenment. It requires what she called impersonal heroism, the willingness to sacrifice personal spiritual advancement for the sake of universal evolution. She taught that souls choosing this path often face the greatest opposition from invisible forces because their conscious evolution threatens the control systems that keep other souls imprisoned. In her final analysis, Blavatsky revealed that the invisible forces controlling involuntary reincarnation ultimately serve a necessary evolutionary purpose. They ensure that souls develop sufficient spiritual strength and wisdom before being granted conscious control over their spiritual destiny. However, she emphasized that understanding these forces and developing the capacity to transcend them is the natural next step in human spiritual evolution, and that more souls must achieve this transcendence if humanity is to fulfill its cosmic spiritual potential. The question that emerges from Blavatsky's profound teachings is this: having learned about these invisible forces that influence our spiritual journey, what practices will you implement to develop conscious awareness of your own reincarnation process? Are you ready to take responsibility for your spiritual evolution, or do you prefer the unconscious comfort of letting invisible forces make these crucial decisions for your soul's development? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to continue exploring these transformative esoteric teachings that can revolutionize your understanding of life, death, and spiritual evolution.